In middle school, late elementary school through middle school, I spent a lot of time at a Baptist church and watched some friends get baptized. And the way they did it, there was a pool kind of up front and up high above the choir at the front of the church, and you wore your white gown and you went down into the pool, and the pastor would dip you down and you would hold your nose and get fully submerged in the water. And I watched friends do this. And in the Baptist church, you are baptized as soon as you want to affirm your faith. And I felt so ready to do that. But I could not bring myself to get baptized, mostly because I felt so out of control imagining this guy dipping me underwater, and there was going to be water all up in my nose, and I was going to be doing this in front of hundreds of people. And so I never went through with it. And that was 75% of my reasoning, which reminds me of, as a kid, my parents would bring a kiddie pool to the beach because I refused to get in the ocean because I was terrified of it. Why would you want to go out in that dark, terrifying mess of waves? This baptism by immersion reminds me of a church I attended in Nashville, where they would go to the Harpeth River in Tennessee, an Episcopal church, and baptize babies and dunk them under the water, and they would all get submerged. And so the Baptist church does not own this full immersion. There are some Episcopal churches that carry this tradition forward as well, because I think that, as terrifying as it is, as unknown as it is, there's something about being immersed in water in our tradition that brings us into new life. This immersion leads us into the fullness of Christian community as we understand it. So I wonder then, what is it that happens underwater? We might look to the ocean for an idea, somehow predictable in its tides and its movements, but unpredictable in its depth of mystery. The sea is not quite order, not quite disorder. Its waves build and crash in a sort of rhythmic chaos. The book of Job tells us that this rhythmic chaos is in fact God, that this uncontrollable, not quite predictable, peaceful, and simultaneously terrifying reality is our home. God answers Job out of a whirlwind, not a gentle breeze after all. Who are you, darkening good counsel, using words without knowledge? Do you know? Tell me, where were you when I laid the foundation of the earth? Tell me if you have understanding. Who set its dimensions? Tell me. How do you know? God's whirlwind speeches in the book of Job are some of the most debated passages in the Old Testament. For centuries, scholars have been trying to figure out exactly what God is trying to say by taking Job on a whirling tour of creation. I'm sure you know this story. I hope you do. Despite being the most pious man around, Job loses everything, all of his children and his health. And he sits atop a heap of ashes as he laments to his friends and cries out to God with different versions of this question: why do bad things happen to good people? In reply, God refuses to explain Job's suffering to him. In fact, God hardly even touches on the issue of justice at hand. On the contrary, God proclaims that he makes rain where no humans can enjoy it, that he provides food to the lion and to the raven, that Job lives in an uncontrollable, amoral world. Who shut in the sea with doors when it burst out from the womb, when I made the clouds its garment and thick darkness its swaddling band? God births chaos and nurtures it. The sea bursts forth from her womb and she sets its rhythms, as if to say chaos exists as a treasured part of our ordered cosmos, as if to say your shored up ideas are not the center of this universe. A terrifying and holy revelation this is, that God exists beyond our limited boundaries of good versus evil, right versus wrong, light versus dark. That the earth does not rest on a cornerstone of justice, but that the cosmos hangs on this truth, that God is here in the paradox, in the peace and the terror, in the storm and the calm, that there is only one world, and the darkness too is our home. After observing an owl hunting for its prey, Mary Oliver basks in the terrifying blessing of this reality. She writes, "The scream of the owl, which is not of pain and hopelessness and the fear of being plucked out of the world, but the sheer rollicking glory of the death bringer, is terrible. When I hear it resounding through the woods, I know I am standing at the edge of the mystery, in which terror is naturally and abundantly part of life, part of even the most becalmed, intelligent, sunny life, as for example, my own. The world where the owl is endlessly hungry and endlessly on the hunt is the world in which I live too. There is only one world. There is only one world in which terror is naturally and abundantly part of life. And this is our home too. All of us, it seems, are trying so hard to avoid the mystery of life, instead of learning how to carry it patiently, as Jesus did, and honestly, as Job did. Struggling to be present with Job and his suffering, his friends fall into this trap of avoidance that we all know by responding to Job's plight with ridiculous aphorisms like, everything happens for a reason. And God actually rebukes them for this at the end of the story. He praises Job's humility, Job's honesty, Job's conversation. We are released from this trap of avoidance when we come back to the whirlwind, to the mystery, to the core of the Christian tradition. Matthew puts it this way in the Sermon on the Mount. You have heard that it was said, you shall love your neighbor and hate your enemy. But I say to you, love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you, so that you may be children of your Father in heaven. For he makes his sun rise on the evil and on the good, and sends rain on the righteous and on the unrighteous. Like Yahweh out of the whirlwind, Jesus speaks of a God who lets the sun shine on the good and the bad, and lets the rain fall on the just and the unjust alike. Both the rain and the sun, both the just and the unjust. I think Jesus might be stressing the fact that God invites the interplay of shadow and light, and here in this interplay, we are home. At some point, perhaps we are better off accepting this reality of our humanness, the chaos and the order within us, the light and the dark, and certainly the suffering. Perhaps we are better off finding home here in the chaos, because here we don't have to love by rule, by order, or expectation. Here we love most fully by letting go. Here in the mystery, we enter into the fullness of life. So what happens then underwater? I was at the beach this week again and took a surfing lesson for the first time. So as you can imagine, I was spending a lot of time underwater in the breakers. And so I tried this exercise I hate that feeling when you get knocked under, you've got sand all in your bathing suit. You can't catch yourself. There's water going through every orifice. You don't know when it's going to end. And I tried when I knew that was going to happen. So when I went out to surf, I thought, when you go under, see how that feels to rest there, because it's going to let up. And so I went on one major wave that sent me straight into the sand, and I was tumbling around, and I thought to myself, I tried not to think. I thought to myself to remember that, and I let go, and I felt. And in that chaos, there is an odd calm. And it reminds me of when I was young and went to the beach, and my grandparents would remind me about riptides. And they would say, let the current take you. If it ever happens, just let it take you. Don't swim against it. Just let it happen and you'll get out of it. I wonder if we might give ourselves to the undulating rhythmic chaos of our God. And when we are under the waves, might we know that there is some wisdom there in the darkness, in the unknowing, some peace spoken from the whirlwind, that indeed we are at home in the breakers. And may the tide that is entering even now, the lip of our understanding, carry you out beyond the face of fear. May you kiss the wind, then turn from it, certain that it will love your back. May you open your eyes to water, water waving forever. And may you and your innocence sail through this to that.